where you're from, and what you're curious about today's session, or what you like to know about from today's topic. Volunteers can even type on the chat. We also have our social media handles. As Mamun has posted our LinkedIn handle and WhatsApp, you can join us there and to know more about us or be engaged with the activities of Nairobi Devops community. Can see from the chat, forgive me if I pronounce your name wrong. Piyush Rope wants to explore about CICD. We also have Rajesh. Thank you for your comments. I have done GitHub and want to know about CICD. I'm from India. Thank you for joining us. As you can see, we are international. We have people from all over from India. Thank you for joining. Volunteers, please. Even just one. Okay, we have Ramsey. You can unmute and introduce yourself. Ramsey, are you there?
Hello, Daniel. Sorry about that. So this is me,
It's
Ramsey.
okay.
My name is Ramsey. I'm joining in from Kenya, and I'm curious to learn something new. I have a bit of knowledge on the CICD using GitHub Actions, so I'm curious on. I want to see something new. What is the best practices when dealing with it?
Hello, Ramsey. We didn't quite hear you. Your volume is quite low.
Oh, am I audible now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Oh, so my name is Ramsey Gisharu. I'm joining in from Kenya, and I'm very curious. What I'm curious about in today's session is that I want to learn something new. I have a bit of experience using the CICD with GitHub Actions, but I want to learn something new, and industry best practices is what I'm looking forward to.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? One last volunteer before we start, before I continue. Oh, okay. So that's good enough. So yeah, Ramsey, thank you. I guess the rest will also interact during the meeting. So expectations from the meeting. So some few guidelines. So mute yourself when you're not speaking to avoid interactions. To avoid interruptions, especially when the speaker is speaking. Uh, Raise your hand if you want to speak. You can use the chat box to write your comments and questions, and also a matter of being respectful and also be curious, ask questions. So as simple as that. So about the community. So this is Nairobi DevOps community again, as I mentioned earlier. So our mission is simply to create a supportive and inclusive community that values diversity and supports learning and growth. Yeah. Our vision as well. So that was our mission. So our vision is to be a leading DevOps community in Nairobi and beyond, driving innovation and empowering professionals to excel in their careers. Simple as that. Yes. So part of the team, we have Samuel Kadima, co-founder and director. We have Mamun Bwanakombo as assistant director, Marceline Muchoma, I guess she was the moderator last week for those who attended. Not last week. There was some previous event. Oh, last week's event was physical anyway. But I guess if for those who have been frequent attendees, have interacted with or have the privilege to see some of them or interact with some of them. So we have Marceline Muchoma as the community outreach manager, Samson Kalume as the program lead, Ian Rutich as the treasurer and assistant community outreach manager, Alvin Ndungu as project lead, Emma Gachoki as events and social media manager, Lawrence Juma, assistant events manager, Franklin Odd, administrator, Ivy Chepto as a creative manager, and myself, Daniel Orega, as assistant creative manager. So this is part of the team that is organizing these events and the things behind the scenes, for this community. So if you would like to help the community, you can help by running workshops or talks on topics that come comfortable to you. So in the future days, if you feel like you have enough knowledge you'd like to share, you can reach out to us and we can book a slot for you. You can also connect us with DevOps professionals. Yourself, if you're a DevOps professional, connect with us and help us build and learn and build this community, giving feedback, sharing ideas on how we can make the community better, sharing our post and posting on your channels to expand to spread the information out there on what we do, documenting activities and organizing events. That is, you can volunteer in whatever way from the list here. In any way, you can reach out to us if you have the capabilities of doing some of these activities. So as of that small introduction, I'd like to welcome our speaker for the day to now take over and share his knowledge with us.
All right. Thank you, Daniel, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here, of course, virtually. So, just for introduction, my name is Chris Achinga, and I'm a software developer at Swahilipot in Mombasa. So, I mainly design architecture solutions and then come up with ways of building the solutions, not necessarily writing code, but if they need me, we do write the code, update it, and we have the solution running to the community. So that's what I mainly do. On a side note, I also do technical writing, anything to do with websites, full stack, front end, anything that strictly or anything that I just learned, anything fascinating about the web and programming in general. So for today's session, it will be just like a quick 45 minutes run through CI/CD with GitHub Actions. So without further ado, I'll just start introducing. What do I say? I'll start sharing my screen. Just a minute. So allow me to share my screen, if that's okay. Just a minute. All right. So I hope my screen is visible. Sorry. So just a minute. Cool. So I hope my screen is visible. Could someone confirm that, please?
Yes, it is.
Oh, awesome. Great. So the topic is CI/CD with GitHub Actions. So first I did the presentation. So CI/CD, it's an abbreviation, and in full it's continuous integration and continuous deployment. So it's one of a software development practice that aims to automate and streamline development processes. So when you talk of development processes, it's when coming up with solutions, or when we want to ship a specific feature, let's say it's an e-commerce or anything. So you have stage one, where you either write the code, and then stage two, you kind of test what you've done, and then stage three, you now publish it to maybe to a deployment platform, and then you ship the feature to the public or something. So yeah, CI continuous integration involves integrating code changes frequently into a shared repository, triggering automated builds, and then testing to catch integrations issues early. So on CI/CD, the CI part, it's let's say you're working on a project, but you're like more than two people working together. So person one is working on a specific feature that, let's say, automates, not really automating, but kind of changing the value of a button. So let's say from login to sign in. So after you've changed the login text to sign in text, it's not a good practice to just push the changes on deployment. So you have to test and see if that change you made affects anything on the other code base, and if it does, you can now continue to the next step, which is CD, continuous deployment, which focuses on automating the deployment of the tested code and then changing production, and then pushing the changes to production or staging environment that makes your deployment faster. So CD actually handles the part where after making any changes to your code, you don't have to go to your server or deployment environments and then start rewriting those commands to publish, to build. So CD automates all this process. So that's how CI and CD work together. So just again, continuous integration kind of helps check for frequently changes, checks for changes that are made into maybe into a code base or repository. Then depending on how you've designed your CI, you can either run tests to see if anything is good, and then if those tests pass, you now go to CD, where you automate the deployment process of the tested code. Then you push the changes to either production or staging environments. So why would people use continuous integration and continuous deployment? Well, first thing it does, of course, it reduces the manual errors. So of course, if let's say you're working like a team of 5 people on a certain project, and then of course the chances are all those people in the team are having different development environments. So once I've done changes to my once I've done changes to the part of the code, I push it to, let's say, a version control system, kitu kama GitHub or Bitbucket, and then now I have to wait for other people to come and update their changes. So there could be issues starting from merge conflicts, and maybe what you've done does not work, so you go and kind of crash the deployment process and all that. So once you set up the CI/CD processes, it will run the tests actually before pushing or publishing to production. So, and then the good thing with CI/CD, if the tests fail, of course nothing is pushed to the next stage, so you have that chance to rectify or work on the issues. So reducing that error margins. And then you have another great thing is that you have faster deployment, and then faster deployment just means you can ship faster to the market. Again, with the CD, that is continuous deployment. Let's say you are deploying your project on platforms like either of the VPS. So could it be DigitalOcean or Linode or anything? So you don't have to log in into your droplets on DigitalOcean, confirming that everything is working. So you just CI/CD, you just configure everything at one go. Once tests are passing and everything is approved, the deployment is automatically done, hence the faster deployment process. And then the easier collaboration with CI/CD, as we'll look into later. It enables you to like work on GitHub pull requests. Once a user that's done on a feature, creates a pull request, you don't need to wait for someone to come in and manually check on your code or check what you've done. CI/CD will automatically run tests, see if they've passed, of there's an error, and then roll back in case there's an error. Of if the tests work correctly, you can move into the next stage. So what you're going to focus on this call, it's actually GitHub Actions. So normally there are a lot of platforms that you can use to handle the CI/CD. So there are platforms like Travis CI, Circular, I guess it's Circle CI. But for this call, we're going to focus on GitHub Actions. So GitHub Actions, it's a CI/CD platform that runs on GitHub that helps automate your builds, your tests, your deployment pipelines. And the good thing about GitHub Actions, it helps you do all these CI/CD activities inside your GitHub repository. So two features of GitHub Actions that maybe will convince you to use them, Ama, will really be grateful to your team or to your projects. It's the first thing, of course, it's integrated with the integration with GitHub. So GitHub Actions, you don't need to set CI/CD on third-party tools or platforms like Travis CI or Circle CI or any other platform that you've been using before. So it works within your repository. You can easily customize your GitHub Actions to run depending on how you want them to do and all that. And then it's flexible and it's customizable. You can write GitHub Actions on literally anything, any process that you want to run. Either you want to run tests, or you want to test your features, or you want to test your deployment if it will work, and all those things. And then the other thing that there's a whole marketplace and a community for GitHub Actions. One of the greatest things, one of the things that people look into before selecting a tool, a stack, it's the availability of the community behind it, in case you come across a blocker or a bug or anything, so that you can run into for help or assistance. So GitHub Actions has this done, and then it's event-driven. It has event-driven execution. So this means that you can set your GitHub Actions to run on, let's say, a pull request, on creating an issue, on creating a branch, and all that, and then it can run on multiple environments. So deployment, you can simulate a deployment environment, a staging environment, or a development environment, or whatever kind of environment that your project or your team projects designed to work on. So setting up GitHub Actions is not a more technical process. It's simple. So say on the same directory or on the same folder where you have your source code, where you have your files and everything, you just you first create a directory called .github, and then now inside the .github you create another directory called workflows, and then inside there create each file that will define your CI/CD. And then GitHub Actions use the YAML syntax. So it's a simple syntax that we'll see later on a demo how it works. So you just use YAML to define what needs to be done, actions need to be taken, and everything. And then now after that, you need to trigger workflows. So when will this GitHub action take place, or when will this CI/CD thing progress take place? Is it when someone pushes code to the GitHub repository? Is there when there's a pull request? Is there maybe it's time based triggered? Let's say when it is 7 a.m. run this task and all that. So yeah, talk is cheap. So let's review some code, and then we'll try explaining how actual GitHub actions work. So the first example will be a GitHub action that runs on a pull request. So I'll jump ahead and show you the example. So I'll go to my repository. So this is the report to my portfolio. And as I said earlier, when you want to create a GitHub action, you start by creating a folder called .github. So, and then inside .github, you create another folder called workflows. So inside workflows now, you can now create all the actions that you need to run depending on the instructions that you give it to it. So in my repo, I have test and run action. So the name, so as we'll just go through it and then you see as I explained. So the syntax of this workflow is YAML. So it's not a tough or a difficult language or tool to understand. So the first thing you have to define the action. So the name of this action is to test and build Next.js. So the thought behind this is most of the times when I'm trying new features, or I've read an article somewhere that solves a certain issue, and then I follow through the processes, the code works correctly, and then after deploying it on, let's say, Vercel, the deployment fails. So I needed to catch that before actually deploying it, and then so I decided to have like a simple GitHub action that does that for me. So it's built on Next.js, so I gave it a name that's easier to remember. Again, common variables and all that stuff. So
Chris, there is a request that you zoom in.
okay. Just a minute. Is that fine?
I think it's fine.
Okay, awesome. So right. So there you go. So the next part, it's defining when and how the request when and how the action will run. So normally it's a great practice that when you're working on a change on maybe some code changes or some feature changes or some feature updates on your source code, and then you're using GitHub for version control, you don't do everything directly on the main branch. So I have a separate branch that I work on the updates and everything. So this specific line instructs the action to run whenever there's a pull request to the main branch. So this means, let's say on my branch name, let's say I created a branch called development patch 1, development patch 2. So once I've done, I've completed a feature on a bug fix on development patch 2 branch, I created a pull request to the main branch. This is when this action is triggered. And then now the next line, line 8, we are now describing jobs. So jobs is actually what it will actually do. So you first identify what just create like a simulated environment. So mine I'll be using, so it will be running on all this action will run on a simulation on like Ubuntu, and it's Ubuntu latest. There are a lot of options you can select from the documentation. So and then the steps that are now like the step-by-step procedure of which I want this CI/CD to do. So the first one is to the first one is a checkout repository. This actually means this action should run on this on the root repository. So it doesn't run on any other project, but the specific one where the workflow is the workflow file is at. So again, it uses an action checkout version 2. So this is version 1, and I think currently at version 2, but that's to be confirmed. And then now the second part is I called it to setting up Node.js. So if you're using Node.js, let's say Python or Node.js or PHP, you can now have different actions for maybe setting up PHP, Node.js, or any other tool or language. So in this example, it's Node.js. So I'm using the action for setting up Node.js, which is again, it's in version 2. You can check out for other versions, and then now you define the Node.js version. So for GitHub Actions, I think they start from version 14. Version 12 was depreciated, but again, we'll confirm that. But the least, the lowest version you can use is 14 and above. So ensure the version you have resembles the version you have on your development or your deployment environment. So for this project, I'm running the project on version 18, but my server is running on version 14. So I set this on version 14 just to see what will happen when I push a deployment and all that. And then now this one is installing dependencies. So installing continuous npm CI is just a node module that checks for if this one will kind of like check install all the node modules I have on the repository, see if they work, and then if I have some tests, it will run the tests, and then it will run the build, and then that's it. So in like 28 lines, I've defined a GitHub action that will only run upon a pull request to the main branch, and it will run on a simulated environment of Ubuntu latest. The checkout repository, that means it should run on the current repository. I set the Node.js version to be used, and then I install the dependencies from the project, and then I run tests if there are tests available, and then after that I can now run build. So I will again after doing all this, and then you publish your code, the action to GitHub. If you go to the action tab on the GitHub repository, you can actually see that the action ran like 2 weeks ago, and there's an X. This means it failed, and then there's one here. This means it passed. So maybe to show you an example, if I click on this action, this specific workflow run, it will show me that it's actually what ran after I created a pull request called markdown files. So to view the details, I'll just click on it, and then it will give you a breakdown of what really went through and where it failed. So for example, it set up the job. That means it did the operating system, all these processes. After that, the current repository. So it's synced to the repositories. You can see here, it's the same repository that the action is at. After that, now it installed the JS. It's actually checking the versions and all that, and then it installed dependencies, all the dependencies, so it worked. And then when it came to test, the test failed because I did not define a test to run. And then the post checkout, and then a complete job. So after running the action, it completes the job like with all the status reports. So so yeah, that's an example of how a GitHub action can run, and it's all running from the current pull request they have here, a markdown article. So if I go, it will actually do the same thing. So maybe I can show you what happens when you actually run one. So if you click on this, then can I trigger one manually? Okay. All right. We'll just test that out later. So yeah, that's a good example of on how to like set up a simple GitHub action that runs on a pull request. So it's a simple one, nothing complicated. So it doesn't need to handle a lot of things, but again, depending on your requirements, on the process that you have, all shall be well, depending on how you set it up. So again, just to take you through, when creating a GitHub action that runs on a pull request to the branch main, first define the name of the GitHub action. So this name is test and build Next.js, and you are commanding it to run on a pull request. That is when there's a pull request to the main branch. That's when the action will run. And then here, under the jobs, it's where we define what to actually do. So you're going to build this like a demo project on an operating system that is Ubuntu latest, and then you're going to instruct it to run whatever to run the jobs inside the current repository. and then you're going to set up Node.js, which will be version 14. You can change any versions on this, and then now you have to you have it like to install all the dependencies on the current project. If there are tests, it will run tests, and then it's going to build the complete application. So it's simple using GitHub Actions. It's simple to start. It helps you simulate what will happen on a deployment environment. So I'd show you another example of a built-in CI/CD inside Vercel. So this is just the results of CI/CD. So Vercel has a great feature. When you push an update on a branch that is not the main branch that you set on the deployment, it will run a mini CI/CD thing to see if whatever you've pushed makes sense. And since mine had some few errors, it did not. It alerted me that there's some errors. So again, it helps me like find out what issues I have on my code and all that. So yeah, so that's how you like set a CI/CD that works on a pull request. The other example that I'm going to show is a CI/CD that is time triggered. So this one I borrowed an example from a repository by this user called Brighton Masaru. So a basic overview of the project is it's called Shairi, or in English, poems. So what it actually does, it's a simple repository that runs on OpenAI, so ChatGPT stuff. So Brighton scheduled this thing to run daily. So this project runs on a daily basis, where it prompts ChatGPT to create a Shairi, and then it creates a file and uploads it to a folder called Shairi. So in a nutshell, that's what it does. So to do this, Brighton did not have to come back to the repository and manually run the file. So in this case, it's Python. So Brighton didn't have to come and manually run Python to the Python prompts to ask GPT to generate us a Shairi, and then upload the created Shairi inside the GitHub repository. So I will go ahead and show you the workflow. So again, not the syntax, where the workflow is created at. Inside the root of the project, the first folder you create is .github, and then inside .github folder you create another directory called workflows. And then now inside the workflow folder is now where you create your workflow, your CI/CD thing. So it's called generate shairi.yml. Again, it uses the YAML syntax. So this GitHub action is designed to generate a daily shairi or a poem, and then after generating the shairi or a poem, it creates a file of the newly generated shairi or a poem, and then pushes the current update on GitHub. So again, the basic workflow. So common syntax, the name of the workflow, that's what you basically have on top. And then here it's what you set the trigger. So this one triggers, as you can see from the comment, it triggers the workflow on a pull or a pull request events, but only on the master branch. And then it runs every day at 3:15 a.m. On Universal Time Zone. So as you can see, at 3:15 a.m., this is it's like a cron job that runs on a schedule at 3:15. So this is a different kind of action compared to what I showed you last time. This one is triggered by time. So when it's 3:15 a.m. Universal Time UTC, it runs whatever action you wanted to do. And then here the upload dispatch, it kind of means like it has to do the following tasks below, kind of like manually. And then now you describe the build. So again, the first one is kind of like simulating the operating system I would love the action, the command to run on. So in this case, again, Ubuntu latest. So I'm assuming most of you have when running project on virtual server, some of yes, and then common OS you use is Ubuntu or anything Linux based. So after setting the trigger, you now come again. The project uses action checkout version 2. So what this action checkout version 2 means, it's actually enables allows this GitHub action to run on the current project, which in this case it's this Shairi. And then here Brighton went ahead and described and defined the version the tool that is used. So it's going to use Python version 3.8, and that's there. It's clearly defined the language there. So it uses an action setup action version 2. And then after that, of course, when running anything on Python, you have to install dependencies and requirements. So it will first install pip. Pip is kind of like a package manager, kind of like what you have on npm. And then after installing pip, it installs the project requirements. So after installing the project requirements, it now runs the Shiny generation script. So it's basically a Python file that has to be run, and then that prompts GPT to generate a Shiny. So another unique thing about this, it's this project uses environment variables. So let's say you have projects that you need API keys, some other environment variables that you need to test, some to simulate for tests and all that. GitHub allows you to do all that. So you can set up keys on the repository settings. I can show you after this. So this action require open API key where it's clearly defined. So after writing this line here, it will basically go to on the repository checking settings and check if there are any keys stored there. And then now the script that you want to run. So if normally when you want to run a Python file, you have to use the command Python and then the name of the file. So the same thing that is happening here. So so the action will run Python shiny.py, and then it will now it will now prompt GPT to create a Shairi and store it in a file. And then after that, it has to commit the new changes that have been made. So of course, the normal GitHub Git processes, you configure the user email, the username, and then you add a commit message. So this one, it's add daily Shairi. You confirm that in the comment and see the history of it. And then after doing that, it pushes and changes. You can see it uses to do that. And then these are GitHub token. So you have to create a GitHub application and then get the GitHub token from it. And then the repository, it's the current repository, and the branch, it's pushing it to the branch main. So this is a bit more complex, but the workflow essentially runs a Python script to generate the daily Shairi or poem, and then commits it to the repository and pushes the changes to the main branch. So this typically reduces the work of running the file manually and then updating the code to the new file to GitHub manually. So with this file, everything maybe the repository owner does comes to the folder Shairi and then see what has been generated. So just to confirm, if you go to the root of the repository, you'd see the directory called Mashairi. So inside Mashairi, you'll see all these texts, and all this, maybe it's every day. So when is today? 7th. No, today is 8th. Okay. What's the date today? Today is 9th. So yeah. So for today's text, yeah, you can see it here 14 days ago. So this one was generated today, and you can see it's basically what GPT generated, and it added it to a file. So in a nutshell, that's how we would normally use GitHub Actions on a daily software development kind of life cycle. So I've already showed 2 examples of which you can use GitHub Actions to make your development easier. So the first one that you can simply set up, it's the one that runs on a pull request to your branch. It doesn't need to be a complicated thing, even if it's a simple project, just something that that stimulates what is going to be run on the development server or environment. And then the other example I showed, it's the one like kind of almost complex one that has to run a Python script, generate a file, and to do all that. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's GitHub CI/CD with GitHub Actions. I don't know if I've lost anyone or there are any questions or anything. Okay. Yeah. So it is the simple example that I'd love to show you, and then from there on you can check out GitHub Actions Marketplace. Just let me just share the screen. Let me share the screen to show you the GitHub Action Marketplace. I hope my screen is visible. So on GitHub Action Marketplace, as you can see, there are a lot of actions that you can easily set up. So this one for setting up a .NET Core SDK, setting up a Java SDK. This one is for close, like literally anything that you do to do setting up a JS environment. So when you click on any of these, wait for the internet. When you click any of these GitHub action, it gives you like a step. So this one is the node setup version 3, and then you can specify which version you want, either version 12, version 10, or anything that is less than or equals to version 10 or 16, latest, any other version. You can specify your own built-in version. There is this action to check for the latest version and all that. So it's a more complex process for setting up GitHub Action, but it's a very simple way to use it. So this is a common use case. So using that template, you can easily create an app and GitHub that basically sets a version 18 of JS environment and runs all the installation for your project and runs, and then you can go ahead and maybe do something and set up triggers for the action. Yes, Mamun.
Hi, Chris. There was a question in the comment from Wesley Walker. It says, is the YAML file automatically generated or manually generated? So I don't know which YAML file, but you can be able to highlight that.
Oh yeah, sure. So when you're using GitHub Actions Marketplace, let me share my screen again. So when you're using GitHub Action Marketplace, like my screen visible? Okay. So like this example here, when you use this, the GitHub Action will be you have to copy this. So there are some that you have to copy and paste and create the YAML file automatically. So and the other ones, there's some GitHub Actions that will automatically create the YAML file. But normally you have to create it on your own. So for example, on this workflow, I can manually add a file. I can create the YAML and then I say pick up ds environment dot YAML, and then now I can paste I got from this action, let's say setup Node.js, and then I use the latest version. So I just copy this, yeah, and have it here. But again, the other thing with the marketplace, you have to like understand what the YAML does, some of the syntax. So after doing that, you can commit your changes, creating up a simple one. So very few occasions you'll find that the .yaml file automatically creates itself, but you have to do this manually. So you can do it on GitHub on your project or on a laptop or something. So I hope I've answered you.
Yes, thanks, Sam.
On my end, I couldn't see what he was doing, so I thought probably, is it on my end only, or
Okay.
I also
is it an internet lag? Yeah.
Yeah, it took a little bit of time, but then it came up. So if you guys would like us to, he would like him to show us again, we can. He can. I think Chris can do that.
Sure, I can definitely do that.
Then we also have some 2 more questions. You can go on with.
Okay.
So you start with showing us the YAML file issue. Yeah?
Okay, sure. So let me share the. So is it visible? Can you all see my screen?
Yes, it's
Yes, we can see.
All right. So when you want to create a GitHub action and you're doing this manually, when you go to the GitHub Action Marketplace, they'll give you like a code snippet that simplifies the creation process, like what we've seen in this file here, like this one. So to do that, once you've copied the code snippet from the GitHub Action Marketplace on inside the GitHub platform, you can simply create a file. You can create a new file, and then so you can just give it a name, so test.js, and then it has to end in a .yaml, and then after that you can now paste in the changes. So of course there's an error with this, but this is basically how you create a Node.js a GitHub action file that defines the name of the GitHub action, what it will run on, maybe what you can do, the command in a jobs and all that. And then after doing that, just commit your
Hi,
changes.
Sorry to cut you off. Your screen is frozen.
Or are you sharing a single tab?
Yeah,
I'm
Yeah,
I'm
maybe
sharing
you can share the entire screen in order for the pop-up to be seen.
All right. So, or maybe I'm too fast for my internet. All right. So let me share it again. Okay. So yeah. So either that or my internet is on the weekend. All right. So just confirming that my screen can be seen. So
yes, we
can see that. So let me just hop on to another repository and create another action. So again, when you go like when you're setting up actions from a marketplace, so there's some actions when you actually create an action, they will how do they do? They'll give you like a code snippet and you paste it in an existing action. So let's just say you're looking for a pull request one, just something new. Okay. So check pull request. So this is an action template that there's no description on it. And when you want to use it, it gives you a code snippet that you have to copy to your .yml file. So I hope we've gotten up to that. Claim to my party. So again, when you go to the GitHub Action Marketplace on GitHub, there are plenty of actions. So you can select any of the actions. So let's say download a build artifact. So whatever this does, so you click on use the latest version, or you can select the versions. So you click on use the latest version. It gives you a code snippet that you have to copy it into your .yml file. So when I copy this and then go back to my repository, and then I'll check this thing here. I'll check for a repo where I have actions. We have actions here. So yeah, so it's my internet that is slow. Apologies for that. Yeah, so with that loads, so basically you again create a new folder that's on the root of the project .github, and then inside the oh, I don't have this one here, so it will take some time. So I'll go back to previous one. So you create a folder called .github, and then inside .github you create a folder workflows. So it's important that you get the spellings correct, otherwise it won't work. So the first one is .github, and then the second .workflows, and then I can add a new file, create a file, and then I give the name of your workflow. In this case, your action. So another action .yml. And then after that, you can now paste in whatever you had pasted before, and then you can commit the changes. Commit. And then once that's done, you can come to the action tabs, actions tab, and then you can find where is this thing here? Let me refresh this, and then you can find all the actions right here. So the ones you've created, let's say another action, and then of course it will fail because there's nothing it's doing. So yeah, you can define an event and all that. So the beauty of using GitHub Action Marketplace, it gives you what action to use, but again, you now have to continue and describe the jobs by yourself, which is the better option in this case. So yeah, in most cases, you'll be creating the .yml file by yourself, because I'm assuming you're the one who understands your projects better. So I'm guessing I've answered that question correctly.
Thanks, Chris.
Awesome.
Randy, you have any question?
Yeah, I have two questions. The first is I've seen you use .yml extension and .yaml. Is there a difference between the two? And my second question is I've seen a lot of your repositories have been deployed. So in your experience using APIs mostly for the backend, which deployment website would you recommend?
Okay. So the first question, there's no difference when having the .yml or the .yaml extension. It's all the same. So when you create a Git action file, with the YAML. It will basically do the same thing as long as it's a YAML file. There's no difference. And on the second question, for where I work, we mostly use PS. So use DigitalOcean and sometimes use GCP. So for DigitalOcean, we deploy Django-based product. So we have a GitHub action that actually checks for every successful branch merge on the main, and then if it's there, all the tests have passed and nothing has broken, it automatically pushes the updates to the website, and then to the server. And then if again there's an error on the deployment on the server, it's previous version until we fix the current error. So I don't know if that answers your question, Richard.
Yeah, but you were breaking up while you were saying them. If you could rate them in the chat, that would be awesome.
Okay, sorry for that. Okay, awesome. So do you repeat the response for the second one?
You can just type the website and that should be fine. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So as I said, maybe there's another question.
We have some other questions on the chat from Lewis. I think you can access the chat and you can answer them in the order you like.
Okay, awesome. So Lewis is asking, can you also automate static code analysis for secure GitHub practices using GitHub Actions? Not quite sure if I understand it, but yeah, you can do we have an action that actually checks what do you say checks for code lint. So basically what you have done with ESLint prettier. So if the code is not up to standard, or it's not standard code, the test will fail. So yeah, you can automate that using GitHub Actions. Ebenezer is asking if all workflows on the marketplace are free. Nope, they are not all free, but majority of them are freely available. Then I also asking if there's any rate limit implications on the number of workflows you can run per hour or per day. I think there is, but I'm not sure of the numbers. But it's even if this limitation is not that restricting, you can have as many as you want until GitHub actually wants you or something. But I'm not sure of the numbers, of any limitations currently, because even on my personal GitHub repo, I've even gone to an extent of having like 10 workflows on one repository, and 3 of them run every 6 hours. So yeah, I don't think there are any, and if there are some, I'll take on it, then we'll update you. And then the answers do you have to worry about decommissioning the runners running GitHub, or GitHub will take care of that for you? So yeah, GitHub takes care for that. So there's something that it's called I've forgotten the name, but after every action there's a cleanup process that GitHub does. So it does that for you. This
I think that's a couple of more questions.
Yeah.
You can scroll to the chat at 8:57 p.m.
Oh, okay.
There's one mostly event, and yeah.
Awesome. So what are some use cases we can use the workflow in AWS server deployment? So again, you can have workflow to help you push updates to the server automatically. So of course you'd have all those configurations normally when you're setting up your server deployment environment, maybe you'd install Git for maybe pushing out, pulling all the changes from GitHub. So there's this SSH. So you'll configure your Git with you'd configure your Git configurations to the actions that points to a AWS server, and then write conditions, maybe if all the tests pass, or if this and this is okay, it's to deployment. So yeah, I guess these are some of the use cases. So maybe you I don't know. I'm not it's a general question, but the most common use case you could use it's deploying maybe some minor changes, some fixing some errors. You won't need to log into your server and then doing all those processes of getting up the updated code base and then pushing it. So just let GitHub Action handle everything. Of course, you have to set the trigger, whether your trigger is once a pull request has been merged, you now have the GitHub Action, among the workflow to deploy to the server run. Hope I've answered that properly, Wesley. And then Evans is asking if I'm using Vercel, are their actions enough, or will I still need to set up GitHub Actions? Well, it's so much. If you're confident enough with the Vercel CTD, that's okay. But I personally love to use GitHub Actions because I can customize them to my own liking. So if I want them to run on, let's say by default, Vercel CICD runs on version Node.js version 18, but my project runs on version 16. So of course there are going to be some issues. But again, I'd advise you to have to set up both GitHub Action so that you can have those customized workflows to run. Yep. I think I've answered all the questions. Yeah. Any other question? Oh yeah. Randy.
Yeah, I was just waiting for the platforms. Or like if your internet is okay, now you can just repeat that, please.
Pardon, I didn't get that clearly.
The platforms to deploy your backend servers.
Oh, depending on which language are we, which tech stack are we is in focus.
Okay. For me, I mostly use Ruby on Rails. I'm not sure which one you use.
Okay, so for Ruby on Rails, you can use Railway. Railways is the one called, of course, it is paid. So Railways, I guess they have a free tier for like $5 a month, and then now you can also use Linode. Linode gives you $100 credit for 3 months, which is good. Again, it's a good deal. I'm not sure of any other options, but pretty sure you can use Linode and Railway or any other thing that you find out. But we can discuss this after the call.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Any other question? Wesley.
I wanted you to repeat the second one that you had said, Railway and?
Oh, Linode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Linode will give you $100 credit for free that you can use within 3 months. So Linode gives you yes, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So I think if there are no any other questions, so I can't say the floor is used. Okay, Steven Getich.
Hi. So I don't know if you've kind of touched on it, but there's this scenario where, like, when you build applications, you have environment variables. So like the environment variables are usually not dependent on the application. And when it comes to kind of deploying, it's usually not included. Let's say if you have, like, as an example, an open source project that is publicly available, and the environment variable contains, let's say, secret keys for or API keys for certain services. It could be AWS, could be DigitalOcean, or in such a case. So my question is, how do you handle such scenarios where you have secret keys, or what's your approach when handling such a scenario? Yeah, using GitHub Actions.
Oh, okay. So I'll present my screen to explain it. So it's loading. Okay. Hopefully my screen is visible.
Yes.
Okay. So in this repository, so the repository uses the project stands on OpenAI APIs. So, and as you all know, OpenAI APIs, you use an API. So for this one, where did he save the API key? Yeah. So in this action for running the Shai regeneration script, there is the part for environment. So in action, you set the env, and then now you define the variable and the key way how you store it. So GitHub Actions allows you to use secret keys, and how you can set up the keys when you go to the project settings. So I'll have to go to my repository. So when you go to the project settings, and then you go to where is it? Deploy keys. You can now add a deploy key here. So whether it's AWS or OpenAPI or any other thing, and then let's say you give the name OpenAPI key, and then you have the key there, and then you add it. So I have to confirm my access. So after adding that, you can now access the key through this syntax here on GitHub Actions. So a $, double curly braces, and then inside now secrets dot the name of the key that you added on the repository settings on GitHub.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Right. I think if there are no questions, I'll pass it over to Daniel.
Okay, thank you for the session. Glad I've learned a lot. I guess also for the audience as well, you have learned a lot. Stephen Ngetich is saying anyone looking for an affordable VPS server, use Contabo. So thank you for that highlight as well. I mean, insight, sorry. So this we are coming to the end of our session today. So just before we end the session, I'd like to share our social media handles. So you guys can see my screen, I believe so. So to join the community, we have LinkedIn. You can just scan that, WhatsApp, Twitter, and Discord. So those are social media handles. Feel free to join us as we embark on this journey of learning and growth. So that's it, guys. Thank you very much. You can live at your pleasure. Thank you.